Wow, Erica, that was quite a list. No pressure. Okay. Thank you all very much. Obviously, I'm always eager to get going around here. I've been actually sitting up here and thinking that this is probably as close as I'll ever get to attending my own funeral. I really appreciate all the kind words. I'm not sure I'm worthy of any of them, but it's really an honor to be here, and I do appreciate it. Despite the fancy robe and the new jewelry, we need to remind ourselves that today is not about me, including how today came together. We had a really outstanding transition committee recognized before, led so ably by Hazel Laux, that made all this happen. Hazel just retired a few months ago, but I think thanks to these duties, she's yet to feel retired. Hazel, you're done in 20 minutes. I can't even begin to enumerate. I started at one point to make a list of all the people I needed to thank, and I was going to end up thanking the entire campus. So it will have to suffice to say that I went to one of the planning meetings to put all this together. Half the campus was present. I quickly figured out I could be of no use in that room, and so left. But you have to remember that an inauguration is not an everyday occurrence at a college. In fact, at Blackburn, it's an every 22 years occurrence. And so all this has come together on top of everyone's regular duties. And it has taken a lot of work and a lot of time, and it's come together beautifully, and I'm honored and humbled at everyone that made this happen, so thank you. I'm also humbled to have so many people here tonight among Rachel and I's friends and family. Of course, my wife Rachel, I would like to recognize my 3 kids, Garrett, Reagan, and Grant, I think was just escorted from the room. Didn't want to hear me talk. He was good until me, which was a great sign. My parents, my brother and sister, my in-laws, friends and mentors from undergraduate and graduate school, friends and colleagues. I once said you only had a gathering like this at your wedding and your funeral. Now I have to add presidential inauguration to the list of times that you get such a group like this together, many of whom have traveled from a long distance, and it means so much that you came here for this. Thank you. Finally, I have to especially recognize the last 2 folks that were up here, Mim Pride and Ed Young. Ed Young has been serving as our board chair for nearly 10 years. As his wife Lillian would surely tell you, that's a full-time job, stewarding an institution like this, and Ed has done it magnificently. I still remember my first interaction with Ed last October, over a year ago, where he was calling all the semifinalists for the position and sort of laying out the process, and here's what's going to happen next. And on his list of things he needed to cover was clearly that Blackburn is in a relatively small town surrounded by cornfields for an hour in every direction. He needed to make sure the candidates understood that. I remember during that conversation, I think I interrupted it, and I said, yeah, I think I know where Carlinville is. I'm from Central Illinois, and don't you guys have a hotel there with like a paddle boat in the backyard and a puddle? And Ed got so excited that I knew where it was. It was clear that I was maybe the first candidate that knew where it was. And so I think from that moment, he became comfortable with me, and I've always been very comfortable with him as a partner at my side through this. And we really appreciate, Ed, all of your work for Blackburn. It wouldn't be the same place without you. Ed represents an entire board of trustees, many of whom are down here in front of me, that are really dedicated volunteer servant leaders for this institution. It's the hardest job you'll ever have to pay to have. And we really appreciate all of your work, and we have an outstanding board. Finally, Mim, I'm so happy that you were able to come back for this. It wouldn't have been the same without you. I count myself as lucky every day that good things happen at Blackburn College. It's because of the work that happened long before I got here. And Mim set me up, and set all of us up for great success. On day 1, I didn't walk into anything on fire. There was no faculty insurrection, a micromanaging board, or some massive budget deficit, at least that I've discovered so far. And that is a testament to her stewardship over 22 years in this role. That is an inspiration to me every day, that she did so well for so long for institutions she loves. And as I know, an inspiration to all of our faculty, staff, and students. And today wouldn't have been the same without you, ma'am. Thank you. One of the things we talk a lot about at Blackburn is the idea of vocation. We're not just here to prepare students. That is not a good sign. Wow. Maybe I should just sit down now. Oh well, things happen. There's good days and bad days, like Mim said. Anyway, one of the things we talk a lot about here is the idea of vocation. We don't just prepare students for jobs or careers, we prepare them to find a calling for their life, a purpose for their life, a place in this world where they know they can have the satisfaction every day of knowing they're making some difference in this world. That's what we do here. And I must say, I feel that sense of vocation, I feel that sense of calling myself at Blackburn College. I am absolutely sure that every college president in the country would say and truly believe that their institution is absolutely unique, special, and worthy of national recognitions for all the great things that it is. And I think they're right in their own ways. I've come to believe, however, that Blackburn College has some attributes and qualities that do make it truly unique on the national stage and give us a role in the future of American higher education that is not similar to other institutions. When I think about what makes Blackburn distinct, the first thing I think about is our commitment to undergraduate liberal arts education. I know we're not alone. There are lots of great liberal arts colleges out there, all of them doing fantastic work, but the truth is there's a dwindling number of them that have stayed true to their core. There's a lot of temptations to specialize. There's huge financial incentives to opening up master's programs and professional programs on campus, online, or in storefronts that most colleges have been unable to resist. Blackburn College has stayed true to its core, despite the fact that there are national calls from parents, from businesses, and from the government itself saying, what we need you to do is prepare students for jobs. Stop teaching them Play-Doh. Teach them programming or something they can use, goes their refrain. But we know at Blackburn College that if that's all we do, we lose something critically important. Liberal arts in modern times is a uniquely American idea, and there's a reason for that. At the heart of what we do at Blackburn College and other liberal arts colleges is we're teaching active citizenship and participative democracy. These are more than theories in a textbook here. A liberally educated citizenry is an absolute prerequisite to the success of our democracy. Thomas Jefferson understood this over 200 years ago when he said, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what never was and never can be. I would suggest that liberal arts education actually creates freedom. A person cannot truly be free if they cannot think independently about the world around them. If you take what's said on TV or in a book and do not question it and think critically about it and simply accept it as truth, you're not free. If you are unable to see multiple cultures and multiple perspectives and form your own understanding of the world, you're not free. At the end of the day, a liberal arts education is teaching values, and we ought not be shy about using that word. We teach the values of the pursuit of truth, reason, social justice, appreciation of difference, the value of beauty, kindness, charity, and leadership. Our graduates must go on to be contributing members of our society for our nation to continue to prosper. It's like the gospel reading we heard today, the blind man sees. Technical training of students may impart a set of skills that they need on certain jobs, but only a liberal education opens their eyes to the world around them. Let me say that liberal arts colleges like Blackburn don't have the market cornered on this. The truth is, despite my competitive spirit sometimes and always wanting Blackburn to win at everything, we need other institutions to be successful. We need other liberal arts colleges, we need research universities, we need public universities, we need community colleges to create the citizens we need for our society. We can't do this alone. It's my hope that those institutions do their educational work without falling prey to the lure of over-specialization. But there are also those that say this model of higher education is dying on the vine. So goes the thought that this is terribly inefficient. Surely we can think of a better way to do this, a more efficient way to do this than a residential campus with small classes, full-time tenured faculty that care about their students and staff that are dedicated to their success. Surely it must be more efficient to pack hundreds of students into an online class taught by an adjunct or a teaching assistant. Surely that must be better and would help us get more educated Americans. There was another time where something very similar was said about technology. There was a time where suddenly the world opened up and knowledge became accessible to the common person. Suddenly, professors and colleges and teachers didn't have a monopoly on education anymore. And surely then, went the refrain then, they would become unnecessary. People could access information on their own, and therefore all of these institutions we've built and learned professions would be unnecessary. The year was 1450 and the Gutenberg printing press had just made books widely available for the first time. And yet somehow, we're still here. We're still relevant, and we're still necessary to the educational enterprise. I would suggest the same is the case today. Technology gives us wonderful new tools in education, but at the end of the day, a website, a chat room, or a massive open online course are no different than a book. They're nice, interesting, good new ways to deliver content. But we understand at Blackburn and other liberal arts colleges that the transformational experience of education happens in relationships. It's having a faculty member who knows your name and knows how to challenge you as an individual. It's having staff members dedicated to your success. It's being part of a community of students that work together and form relationships. That's the magic that happens that you cannot replicate through technology. I believe this distinctive part of Blackburn will remain critically important because people will still demand it. Families and students continue to demand residential undergraduate education for a reason. They know it's not the same as the alternatives, and so we'll continue to make that a cornerstone of who we are. Second among our distinct features is our work program, of course. For those of you new to campus, you may realize we're a work college, and that means that all of our residential students are required to work 10 hours a week contributing to our community. I'm reminded every day that our students actually run the place. I'm convinced that if I didn't show up for work, it would be several weeks before anyone even noticed, and much longer than that before there'd be any ill effect. But if our students decided to go on strike and didn't show up to work tomorrow to maintain our buildings, prepare our food, even teach our classes as teaching assistants here, the place would grind to a halt in a matter of hours. Our students are the most important part of our team here, and we must recognize that. You all may also know that the work program makes Blackburn affordable. We remain the most affordable independent institution in the state, more affordable even than most of the public institutions in the state. And that's thanks in large part to the work program. In fact, Dr. Hudson, one of my predecessors, started it 100 years ago as the self-help plan. We help students help themselves. The work program also creates a campus culture that is difficult to describe to someone who hasn't been at Blackburn for some time. The idea is simple. We are all contributors here. There are no givers and takers here. There are only givers. Alumni come back to campus and say with great pride, I built that building. I laid that sidewalk. I ran that program. Our alums understand, unlike I think alums at any other college, this is really and truly their college, their campus. Blackburn was literally and figuratively built by our students. Our students know that, and it contributes to a sense of pride on campus and ownership, rarely seen other places. There is no 4-year parent-subsidized vacation at Blackburn College. All of our students get up every day knowing they have to work and contribute to our community, and that makes us meaningfully different in terms of the student experience. This actually leads me to what I think is the most important part of the work program. Remember those government officials and parents and business leaders that were complaining about higher education before on inefficiency? They actually have a point. They're just a little off on how they're making it. A bachelor's degree in the United States of America no longer holds the meaning it did a generation ago. We have cheapened the bachelor's degree in this country. It no longer means that a graduate is ready to contribute on day one. As you heard before, I've been able to travel around a lot and meet a lot of entrepreneurs and business leaders and people that have been very successful and people that hire college grads. And one of the things I hear all the time is I can't hire a college grad anymore that's ready to go on day one. They might have the technical skills. It's not that they didn't learn the technical skills they need for the job, that's fine, but they're missing some of the character traits they need for success. They don't know how to dress for work. They don't know how to show up on time for a meeting. They don't know how to facilitate a team. They don't know how to turn off their cell phone at the appropriate times. They are missing the soft skills that employers are demanding and rightly telling us as colleges we need to do a better job preparing students. Blackburn College is the answer to those concerns because of the work program. We have an excellent liberal arts education paired with a work program that gets them ready for career success. At the end of the day, what we teach in the work program is responsibility. We're not training future bricklayers and cooks and custodians. We're using those positions to teach them a set of values and responsibility that they will need when they go on to employment or graduate school. To that end, at Blackburn College, we've now developed learning outcomes for every job on campus. We should know what we're teaching, we should be able to track it, and we should be able to document it so the student knows what they know and they can prove it to employers. We also are committed to developing a developmental program to the work program that makes sure that every student, by the time they're at senior year, they will be able to tell their employer and their first job interview that they led projects, they work independently, they supervised a team, and they got things done in a workplace environment. That's going to put our graduates ahead, and at the end of the day, that's going to mean a Blackburn bachelor's degree still has meaning. The last thing that I would point out that makes Blackburn meaningfully different and unique is our role in providing access to higher education. We're fortunate in the United States. We have the world's premier system of higher education. Students still flock from every corner of the globe to come get an American college degree. And today, 94% of American parents say they want their kids to go to college. I'm not really sure what's wrong with the other 6%, but it's clear that a college education is perceived as the primary path to financial and social security in our country. There is still value to what we do, and people understand that. We have a great deal to be proud of, but we're slipping in higher education, and it's no one's fault but our own. A generation ago, the United States was #1 in the world in the proportion of 25 to 34-year-olds that had a college education. Today, we're 12th. The demand remains there. 70% of high school graduates will go immediately on to some form of higher education. They want a college education. Our problem is they're landing at institutions where they are not likely to be successful. And in fact, of those that start higher education, only 25% will ever achieve a bachelor's degree. At the heart of the matter here is cost. In 1980, the average cost of attendance at a four-year college, put the publics and privates together and averaged them, was just under $3,500. You add inflation to that, and in today's dollars, that's about $8,700. The actual cost of an education today, on average, is $22,000. That's a 250% increase over a 30-year period in constant dollars. The reality is that families simply can't keep pace. Between 2001 and 2010, the cost of a university education as a proportion of family income went from 23% today to just under 40%. Can you imagine getting a bill equivalent to 40% of your family's income? And that's what it costs to send your kid to school. Families are buckling under the pressure. 10 years ago, the average cost of attendance borne by the student's family was just under 40%. Today, it is 27% and falling. Families cannot keep pace, and students are suffering. Naturally, this problem affects those from low-income families the worst. For kids in the top 20% of family incomes, most of them, 56% of them, will go on to get a bachelor's degree. For kids from the lowest 20% of family incomes, only 11% will ever get a bachelor's degree. Let me put 11% in context. 11% is the current approval rating for Congress. It's terrible. We ought to be very worried about that. 35 years ago, the government introduced the Pell Program to help students from low-income families, but even that can't keep pace with this problem. In 1980, 30 years ago, 60% of Pell-eligible students, of low-income students, were studying on four-year college campuses. Today, that number is 35%. 35% of low-income students find themselves on a four-year college campus. Even public colleges, thanks to state budget cuts largely beyond their control, have had to raise tuition so much that they've put themselves out of reach. 20 years ago, 40% of the enrollment at public universities were Pell-eligible low-income students. Today, it's under 30% of our public institutions' enrollment are low-income students that are Pell-eligible. Low-income students are desperate for a college degree, but they're increasingly left with few choices on how to get it. They can choose frequently between their community college, their local community college, or a for-profit institution operating online or in their local strip mall. Those programs may be fine for some students, but the reality is fewer of our students will get a degree if they don't start at a four-year college campus. Whole new business models have sprung up around this. The University of Phoenix, as you may know, is a for-profit, largely online institution. Last year alone, they collected $1 billion from the federal Pell Grant program. The folks running the University of Phoenix are no fools. They figured something out. This is where the growth is in American higher education. In fact, from 1980 to today, from the beginning of the Pell program to today, 87% of the growth in enrollment in American colleges have been low-income Pell students. That's where the demand is. That's where the growth is. The university has figured it out. Have we? What happens to our society if only those who have wealth are allowed access to our four-year institutions? What happens if socioeconomic status is the new segregation and the status you're born into is the status you're stuck with for life? What happens when those who are able and willing to get a college education are denied that opportunity, and at the same time there are no more decent wage jobs left for low-skilled workers? What happens to us as a country? I think this is a national crisis, and it's our fault. Our colleges have been too caught up in seeking prestige to be bothered to help these students. There is unfortunately no prestige in helping financially needy students. There's only prestige in fancy new buildings, programs, and increasing exclusivity. Our colleges are actually rewarded for closing the door on more Americans. Many of our most elite institutions, the ones with billions of dollars in their endowments, actually confess to being less likely to admit a high financial needs student who's equally qualified to a wealthy student. Why? Because if you admit a high-need student and then they can't afford to attend, it messes up their yield rate and their US News ranking. Talk about messed up priorities. They admit it. Our colleges have responded to a series of priorities, a series of incentives that have made this problem even worse. Let me return to our gospel reading. Two things happen that are relevant here. First, the apostles ask whether or not the man or his parents have sinned to cause his blindness. Jesus, of course, says it wasn't his fault or his parents' fault at all. But in American society today, the number one determinant to the future of an individual is the accident of their birth. Their parents' education, their parents' income level is the determining factor above anything else of their future. The second key thing that happens in the reading is that Jesus performs a miracle on a beggar in the street. His goal was to spread the word. And so surely it would have been better in spreading the word to perform a miracle on someone who was prominent, noteworthy, not someone that after the miracle was performed, people said, "Who is that guy? I don't even know who that is." The reality is that there is no prestige in helping the needy. They do not serve to build the reputation of a savior or of a college. But the lesson of the reading is, you do it anyway. Blackburn has always been different in this regard. We've never shied from this mission. Perhaps because of the work program, there is no compunction here about serving those who cannot afford alternatives. We believe we can be excellent and affordable and accessible. That is not a choice. We can do it all and be better as an institution and better as a society for it. In fact, I'm convinced this is such a problem that it's created a massive market of unserved or underserved students who are desperate to have a type of education we deliver. This national crisis is an opportunity for Blackburn College to make a difference. I'm therefore proud to announce today that Blackburn will become the only college in the state of Illinois, and one of only a few in the nation, to offer free tuition to our highest need students. We're calling it the Affordable Access Award, or the AAA. Students whose families have the highest need, and we're going to define that as a $0 estimated family contribution when they complete the FAFSA, will be allowed to come here without paying tuition. They'll get Pell and MAP grants from the state. They'll work for some of that as part of our work program, and then the college will cover the rest. If they're from out of the county, they will have to pay room and board, but our room and board costs are 40% less than the state average, and we'll have a summer work program to help them afford that if that's a problem too. We made this decision several weeks ago, but we hadn't really announced it. And a few weeks ago, we had a family come visit campus. And the daughter and her parents were on campus, and they took the tour, and they met some of our faculty and staff, and they were impressed. And they ended the day in our Office of Admissions and talking with our Director of Admissions, and that's when the family made a confession. We don't really have any money for college. In fact, we've already completed the FAFSA, and we have a $0 estimated family contribution. We don't know how we're going to make this work. Our Director of Admissions told them about the AAA award and that they would qualify for free tuition at Blackburn College, and the mom cried because she knew in that moment for the first time that her daughter was going to get to go to college. Blackburn College is going to walk the walk and give students who need a chance a chance. We will do our part to educate those students, prepare and show that there's a new model in American higher education, one that's built around access and opportunity, not exclusion and excess. In other words, Blackburn College is not just another college. We're a place that has something to say about the direction of higher education, and in fact, the direction of our nation. We believe in an educated citizenry, developed in character through work, and access to all that are able and willing. We've been doing this quietly for 175 years, and it's a model that works. We are an active community of doers, students, faculty, and staff trained to make a difference in the world. Blackburn College is now called upon to be a light in the darkness of American higher education and a leader in our collective future. I am humbled to play a very small role in that future, and humbled to have been invited to join this cause. I hope that you'll all join us. Thank you very much.